Good morning, third graders. Our targets for today are: I will identify the greater amount, lesser amount, and difference in a compare story problem. And I will solve compare story problems using a tape diagram. Some words that you'll need to know to solve compare problems include compare, to tell how two amounts are different. Greater amount. It's the larger whole amount in a compare problem. Lesser amount. The smaller whole amount in a compare problem. Difference. The distance between the greater amount and the lesser amount. You've been learning about compare problems for the last few days. You know that in a compare problem, there are two whole amounts. One of the amounts is larger, it's the greater amount, and the other amount is smaller. It's the lesser amount. No action happens, but the two amounts are compared to find the difference. How many more or how many less? When we want to solve a compare problem, third grade, we can either add or subtract. It depends on what information is missing, whether we will add or subtract. When the greater amount is missing or the unknown information, we add, because the lesser amount plus the difference equals the greater amount. When the lesser amount is missing, we subtract, because the greater amount minus the difference equals the lesser amount. When the difference is missing, we subtract, because the greater amount minus the lesser amount equals the difference. So to review, if the greater amount is missing, we add. If the lesser amount is missing or the difference is missing, we subtract. Here you can see, third grade, I have 6 tape diagrams that are all filled out. You're going to determine, after looking at each tape diagram, what operation we would use to solve the problem. Would we add or would we subtract? Remember, in a tape diagram, the greater amount is on top, the lesser amount and the difference are on the bottom. Look at the first tape diagram. N is the greater amount. We don't know it. 32 is the lesser amount, and 54 is the difference. Would we add or subtract to solve this problem? Because the greater amount is missing, we would add to solve this problem. Lesser amount plus difference equals the greater amount. Now look at the next problem below it. In this problem, 57 is the greater amount, 6 is the lesser amount, and the difference is unknown. It's n. Would we add or subtract to solve this problem? You're right. We would subtract to find this problem with a missing difference, because the greater amount minus the lesser amount equals the difference. Now look at the next problem. 500 is the greater amount. We do not know the lesser amount, it's n, and the difference is 345. Would we add or subtract to solve this problem with a missing lesser amount? You're right. We would subtract to solve this problem. Let's look at 3 more. This time we're going to go a little more quickly. I'm not going to read the tape diagram to you. You're going to look at each diagram and determine what operation we would use, addition or subtraction, to find the unknown information. Look at the next tape diagram. Would we add or subtract to solve this problem? To solve this problem, we will subtract, because the lesser amount is missing. Look at the next problem. Would we add or subtract to solve this problem? To solve this problem with the missing greater amount, we would add. Finally, look at the last tape diagram. Would we add or subtract to solve this problem? To solve this problem, we would subtract to find the missing lesser amount. Great job, third grade. Now that you know for sure which operation to use to solve compare problems, we're ready to talk a little bit more about understanding compare story problems. You know, third grade, that all compare problems have a greater amount. The greater amount is the bigger amount. It's the amount that's worth more. In this little teddy bear problem here, where there are 3 teddy bears and 2 teddy bears and an unknown difference, 3 teddy bears is the greater amount because it's the largest amount of teddy bears. All compare problems also have a lesser amount. It's the smaller amount or the amount worth less. In the teddy bear problem here, the lesser amount is 2 teddy bears because 2 teddy bears is clearly less than the other whole 3 teddy bears. All compare problems also have a difference. The difference is the distance between the greater amount and the lesser amount. It's the difference between the two amounts. When we are reading a compare story problem, there are difference words that give us clues to let us know which piece of information is the difference. Difference words are words that show a difference or that you are comparing. Words like more than or less than, larger than or smaller than, taller than or shorter than, words that show you're comparing two things. Remember, once you've found the difference words within a problem, that tells you that piece of information is the difference. We're going to look at 3 compare problems together. One of the most difficult parts of solving a compare problem is figuring out which piece of information is the greater amount, which piece of information is the lesser amount, and which piece of information is the difference. We're going to look at 3 different story problems, 3rd grade, and we're going to read them carefully to determine what is the greater amount, what is the lesser amount, and what is the difference. The most important thing for you to look at when you're solving, when you're determining a greater amount, lesser amount, and difference in a story problem, 3rd grade, are those difference words. They're going to help you figure out which amount is greater and which amount is less. The difference words are like the key to the whole problem. I'm going to read this problem to you, and we're going to find the information that they give us and the question we're trying to solve. Donovan has 18 less shells in his collection than Jalen. If Jalen has 27 shells, how many shells does Donovan have in his tank? I can clearly see that one of the pieces of information is that Donovan has 18 less shells in his collection than Jalen. I can also clearly see that Jalen has 27 shells. Those are the 2 pieces of information I know, that Donovan has 18 less shells in his collection than Jalen, and that Jalen has 27 shells. The question that I need to answer says, how many shells does Donovan have in his tank? This is what I'm trying to find out. This is my unknown. How many shells does Donovan have in his tank? Now, 3rd grade, we're going to think for a moment. What are the 2 amounts? What are the 2 things that we're comparing? Oh, yes, I'm comparing the shells Donovan has to the shells Jalen has. I need to figure out which piece of information is my greater amount, which piece of information is my lesser amount, and which piece of information is my difference. Let's go ahead and look for those key compare words, because they're going to help me know right away which piece of information is the difference. Let's read the problem again. See if you can find the words that show comparison. Words like more than, less than, greater than, fewer than, larger than, smaller than. Let's read. Donovan has 18 less shells in his collection than Jalen. If Jalen has 27 shells, how many shells does Donovan have in his tank? Oh yes, I clearly see that the compare words are less shells than Jalen. I can clearly see that this piece of information that includes those compare words, that Donovan has less shells than Jalen, must be my difference because it includes the comparison. I'm comparing Donovan and Jalen's shells, and I see that Donovan has 18 less shells than Jalen. That is clearly my difference. Now, this piece of information, that Donovan has 18 less shells than Jalen, is also the piece of information that's going to help me figure out which of these other pieces of information is my greater amount and which is the lesser amount. I know that Jalen has 27 shells. I do not know how many shells Donovan has. That's what the question's asking me to find. So I need to figure out, does Jalen have the larger amount of shells or does Donovan? What's the greater amount and what's the lesser amount? Well, when I look at the difference, Donovan has 18 less shells in his collection than Jalen, I can see that Donovan has less shells. If Donovan has less shells, then obviously Jalen has more shells. That means that Jalen is the greater amount, Jalen's shells is the greater amount, and Donovan's shells will have to be the lesser amount. Now, third grade, that we've really thought about this and we can clearly see which piece of information is the difference, which piece of information is the greater amount, and which piece of information is the lesser amount, I want you to think in your brain, what piece of information is unknown? Is it the greater amount, the lesser amount, or the difference? Oh yes, I can clearly see that the question is asking me about the lesser amount. So I know the unknown information is the lesser amount. Now, third grade, it's time for you to think. Would we add or subtract to solve this problem if it has a missing lesser amount? Yes, to solve this problem, third grade, you would subtract. Because when a problem has a missing lesser amount, you subtract to find the answer. Let's go ahead and look at another problem, focusing on reading and understanding it. Here's the problem. Let's read it together. Nadim and Ty are collecting bouncy balls. Nadim has 60 bouncy balls. Ty has 21 more bouncy balls than Nadim. How many bouncy balls does Nadim have? I can clearly see that one of the pieces of information is that Nadim has 60 bouncy balls. The other piece of information is that Ty has 21 more bouncy balls than Nadim. The question we need to solve is how many bouncy balls does Nadim have? I'm going to let you think. What are the compare words in this problem? What are the words that show we're comparing two things? Oh yes, the compare words are clearly that Ty has more bouncy balls than Nadim. Those words show that I'm comparing the amount of bouncy balls Nadim has and the amount of bouncy balls Ty has. Since that piece of information, Ty has 21 more bouncy balls than Nadim, includes the compare or difference words. Is this piece of information, Ty has 21 more bouncy balls than Nadim, is that piece of information the greater amount, the lesser amount, or the difference? Yes, that piece of information is the difference because it includes the difference words, 21 more bouncy balls than Nadim. Now, third grade, I need you to think really carefully. We know Nadim has 60 bouncy balls. We know that Ty has 21 more bouncy balls than Nadim. Use that information about the comparison that Ty has 21 more bouncy balls than Nadim to figure out who has more, who is the greater amount. Is Ty the greater amount, or is Nadim the greater amount? In this problem, Ty has more bouncy balls than Nadim. So Ty Okay, third grade, let's take a look at another problem together. Nadim and Ty are collecting bouncy balls. Nadim has 60 bouncy balls. Ty has 21 more bouncy balls than Nadim. How many bouncy balls does Ty have? I can see that one piece of information in this problem is that Nadim has 60 bouncy balls. The other piece of information is that Ty has 21 more bouncy balls than Nadim. The question that I need to answer is how many bouncy balls does Ty have? I can clearly see that because I want you to read very carefully through this problem again and find the compare words, the words that show we're comparing two amounts. Yes, the compare words in this problem, the words that show we're comparing two different amounts, are more bouncy balls than. Those words show that we're comparing the number of bouncy balls Ty and Nadim have, and we can see that one person has more bouncy balls than the other. Now, I want you to think third grade. If this piece of information, Ty has 21 more bouncy balls than Nadim, if that piece of information includes the compare words, is that piece of information the greater amount, the lesser amount, or the difference? That piece of information is the difference because it is showing the comparison. It's the difference between how many bouncy balls Ty has and how many bouncy balls Nadim has. Now, third grade, you're going to really have to think carefully. We know Ty has 21 more bouncy balls than Nadim. So I need you to figure out who has the greater amount of bouncy balls. Does Nadim have the greater amount of bouncy balls? He has 60 of them. Or does Ty have the greater amount of bouncy balls? Yes, Ty has the greater amount of bouncy balls. So the greater amount is actually the question. It's asking how many bouncy balls does Ty have? That means, of course, that Nadim's bouncy balls is the lesser amount. He has fewer bouncy balls than Ty, so he has the lesser amount of bouncy balls. We can clearly see that the unknown information in this problem is the greater amount, because the question is asking about how many bouncy balls Ty has. If the unknown information is the greater amount, third grade, would we need to add or subtract to solve this problem? You're right. To solve this problem, we would add, because the greater amount is missing, and lesser amount plus difference equals greater amount. Let's take a look at just one more problem. I'm going to read it, and we'll find the information they give us, as well as the question they're asking. There are 87 first graders at UPP. UPP also has 95 third graders. How many more third graders are there at UPP than first graders? Well, clearly one of the pieces of information is that there are 87 first graders at UPP. The other piece of information is that there are also 95 third graders. The question is asking how many more third graders are there at UPP than first graders. Third grade, read through this problem again to yourself. I want you to think, what are the comparison words, the difference words that show we're comparing two amounts? Yes, the difference words that show we're comparing two amounts are that there are more third graders than first graders. That shows we're comparing the number of third graders to first graders. If the question includes those compare words, how many more third graders are there than first graders? Is the question asking us to find the greater amount, the lesser amount, or the difference? You're right. Because the question includes those compare words, we know the question is asking us to find the difference. Now, third grade, we need to look at the two pieces of information we have left. There are 87 first graders at UPP and also 95 third graders. The two things that we're comparing in this problem are the number of first graders and the number of third graders. We need to figure out which one of them is the greater amount and which one is the lesser amount. Think very carefully. Which piece of information is the greater amount, the number of first graders or the number of third graders? You're right. The greater amount is the number of third graders. We know that because the comparison is saying how many more third graders are there than first graders. So clearly there are more third graders. We also know that because there are 95 third graders but only 87 first graders. 95 is a larger number than 87. So clearly the number of third graders is the greater amount and the number of first graders is the lesser amount. When you look at this problem, third grade, and you see that the unknown information is the difference, it's what the question is asking about, would we need to add or subtract to solve this problem? You're right. To solve this problem, third grade, we would subtract. Because when the difference is missing, we subtract the greater amount minus the lesser amount. Thank you for talking more about compare problems with me today. You'll have an assignment today where you will solve 3 compare problems independently. In the 3 problems, any one of the pieces of information, the greater amount, the lesser amount, or the difference, could be missing. Make sure to solve each problem on a piece of scratch paper or your whiteboard using a tape diagram. Do your very best work to show exactly what you know. Have a great day, third grade.